So good to be with you this morning. This morning we're beginning a new series, and we're talking about the idea of growing my life in Christ. We talked about, how we get over our past. We dealt with that. We talk about a relationship with Christ. But sometimes people struggle with their daily walk in growing to be more like Christ. Every Sunday you come, every Sunday, every month, sometime in the month, we're talking about, hey, you need to be closer to God. You need to be more like Christ. Well, what we're going to be doing over the next several weeks is we're going to be talking about those things specifically that help us in growing in our own personal faith. Today, we're going to be looking at the idea that in order for me to grow in my faith, I need to personally come to a point where I recognize the uniqueness of Jesus. Now, the word unique is thrown around so much that there's almost no uniqueness to the word. It's lost its meaning in some point. But you know what? The word unique means one and only. One and only. There's nothing else anywhere in the world like it. We can truly say that about Jesus. Now, I know this. If you want to learn about Jesus, let me encourage you not to go to the internet to find your information. Occasionally, I'll go there just to see what the internet has to say. And the internet is filled with false information about Jesus. There's all this new, never before known about information about Jesus that you can find on the internet continually. But let me put this in. Let's say that, let's say that Matt, I was studying about Matt 300 years from now. And all I had to go on was his resume and 2 testimonies from his students. That's all. I didn't have any other information. There was no other data about him. And I read that, and I go, let's spice this up a little. Let's add to it 300 years later that Matt lived 2 years on Mars. And, for several years, he was the president of a country. And he just had all, and we can make up all kinds of things about Matt. And 300 years from now, you could read that information and you would not know what was true and what was false unless you actually went back to the original documents. Now, here's what I want you to understand. In schooling, I remember one time our teachers were teaching something about the founder of America, Christopher Columbus. And I thought, that doesn't sound right, because I had read Columbus's diary. And what they were teaching was 180 degrees opposite of what Christopher Columbus's diary said happened. I can tell you this. There are things you are learning today that are 100% fake news about people that are historical people that only lived less than 100 years ago. The internet has created the opportunity for everyone to be an expert. And so when you go out there and you begin looking, and I've looked, and I continue to look, and I find all kinds of amazing stories about Jesus that make him a little less than God, a little less than perfect, even sinful. They make him less than likable. They make him morally even evil. They make him a lunatic in some cases. Some of these are written by individuals that are in other religious groups. Some of them are by individuals that just outright hate Christianity. But you know what? I find people all over the world reading the internet for their news, for their information, for their knowledge of Jesus Christ. If you're not in the Bible learning about Jesus, you're learning about a false Jesus. So here's what I want us to do today. I want us to understand we've got to go to the Bible to see what it has to say and understand the uniqueness of Jesus Christ. The passage that we begin our focus with is taken from Mark chapter 14, verse 61 and 62. The high priest is questioning Jesus. And it says, "But he kept silent and did not answer. And again the high priest was questioning him and saying to him, 'Are you the Christ?'" Now remember, Christ is not Jesus' last name. It is his title. Christ means Messiah, the appointed one, the anointed one, the one who can bring salvation, the only one who is the answer to the solution to the sin problem of the world. That's what the title, the Christ, stands for. So are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? You see, in their world, they would have never said the name of God. God is YHWH. It's written as an unpronounceable word. They substitute in the Bible the word Lord, capital Lord, so that they don't take the name of God lightly or in vain in any way. So when he says, "Are you the Son of the Blessed One?" he's talking about God. And Jesus said, "I am." Man, there's so many people out there that say Jesus never claimed to be God. And there are people who will take this particular verse and say, but it really doesn't say that. In fact, I heard several different Islamic teachers this week talking about this very verse and about why it doesn't really say, "I am." But folks, in the Bible, in the original language, in the original text, Jesus says, "I am. And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Jesus rules. Jesus reigns. Jesus returns. And I want us this morning to think about our faith is built on someone who is solid. Our faith is built on someone who is real. We're not following a mystic. We're not following a fake. We're not following just an idea or a philosophy or a teaching that changes repeatedly throughout history. We're following a person. His name is Jesus. He is real. And when we recognize him as unique, it makes all the difference in the world. We'll walk rather quickly through 7 points. I could have made 20 easily, but I didn't think you'd want to stay through 20. But hey, let's go quickly through these 7. The first one, Jesus Christ is unique in that he alone, get that, he alone. You can circle that, star it, underline it, do whatever you want. Make sure you understand there is no other being on earth who has ever fulfilled what we're fixing to talk about. Jesus alone is the God-man. Now you go, God-man, what's that mean? Lots of people claim to be God. I mean, every Mormon man claims, if he's lived his life well, that he is God and could claim to be the God-man. It's not what this is. This is God who became flesh and dwells among the people. Jesus alone is 100% God, 100% man. He is pure, He is love, He is holy, He is set apart. There's not a little bit of good in Him and a lot of bad. There's not a little bit of bad in Him and a lot of good. You know, there are a lot of people that will accept Jesus if they could say He wasn't all good, He wasn't all holy, He wasn't all righteous. There are a lot of people who would love that. But He is God, perfect in every way, holy in every way, righteous in every way. The Old Testament gives us some amazing information about Jesus. Matter of fact, let me ask you this. How many of you got to choose where you were born, when you were born, how you were born, what race you were born, what sex you were, what region you were born in, how you would live out your life, and how you would die before you were born? Anybody? Nobody. But the Old Testament tells us the how, the when, the where, how he will live out his life, what tribe he will come from, what lineage he will be, how he will live, and how he will die. Hundreds of years before his personal birth on earth. Micah chapter 5 verse 2. But as for you, Bethlehem Ephratah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be a ruler in Israel. His going forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. God talks about the fact that the sepulcher will not depart from Judah. We see David, Abraham, Seth, Noah, all of these in the lineage. We see those pointed out in the Old Testament. We see his life, we see his death, we see the map laid out. And when we think about Jesus, and again, going back to that statement some people make of, he never claimed to be God. Look at what John chapter 10, verse 30 says, when Jesus says, I and the Father are one. We're not two different beings. We're not two different ideas. We're not from two different sources. We are the same. So, the first thing we need to understand is that Jesus is God who became flesh to dwell among us. And as a result of that, we have him unique to look at. The second thing I want us to see is unique. He is virgin born. You and I have parents. There's a father and a mother. There's a male and a female. Always. It doesn't matter what technology does. It doesn't matter what that's what has to happen. Mary was the vessel through which God would enter the earth, but there was no man involved in her pregnancy. The Spirit of God created the pregnancy there. There is a virgin conception. It's unique in the sense of the birth. The prophet Isaiah in chapter 7 verse 14 says, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. Matthew references this when he's writing in chapter 1, verses 22 and 23, Luke, who, by the way, is a physician, a scholar, is the one who elaborates the most about the birth of Jesus. And if anybody were going to say it's fake, he would have been the ones that should have been able to say that. But Luke says Mary was a virgin. You may go, well, I don't understand that. You know what? There's a lot about God. If you're honest, you will never understand. You don't understand electricity, but it doesn't stop you from using it. You don't understand how a microwave works, but if you've got one, you still use it. You don't understand how air conditioning works, but we all benefit from it. There's all kinds of things we don't understand. But I can guarantee you'll never get your mind around God. God doesn't have to make sense to you and me to be real. So we need to understand uniquely, He's the God-man. Uniquely, He's virgin-born. Uniquely, He did many undisputed miracles. Now, you may go, oh, plenty of people dispute the miracles. Not when He was doing them. Not within hundreds of years of Him doing them. The disputes we see mostly about the miracles didn't even come about until about 1800. Wow. You think about the miracles. You think about what's going on. The uniqueness of the life of Christ was that it was filled with miracles. Not just something that happened occasionally. He starts His ministry right off. He's at the wedding of Cana, and He turns the water to wine. He walks on water. Peter and other fishermen are out there fishing in the boat, and they can't catch anything, haven't caught anything all night. Jesus comes up and says, hey, throw your net on the other side. Well, we're tired. They throw their net on the other side, and what happens? They have to call the other boats because there's so many fish, the nets are breaking. They needed to pay a tax, and what does Jesus do? Go catch a fish. And when you catch the fish, pay the tax. What? Am I going to sell the fish? No. The fish is going to have a coin in his mouth. And it's going to be the exact coin that we need for the tax. Boom. It happened. He gathers 4,000 men at one point, 5,000 men at another point, more than 12 to 15,000 people each time. And in two different incidences, He takes loaves of bread and fish and blesses it and feeds the people, and they have massive leftovers. He sees people who are lame and He heals them. He sees people who are mute and He heals them. He sees people who are born blind and He heals them. The leper, the outcast, the person that you wouldn't want to be around at all, He would touch them. Or He would speak to them and they would be healed. He would cast out demons. He would raise several dead people. Now, a lot of people will go, yeah, but the girl just died. And this person, let me ask you this. How many of you have ever raised somebody that just died? Oh, but, they came back to life in a little while. It was a resuscitation act. Well, you know what? I'm glad the Bible includes Lazarus. Because in the mindset of the people, you could possibly be resuscitated within the first 3 days after your death. I don't really know where they got that thought, but that's what they thought. Jesus hears that Lazarus is sick. And unlike other occasions, He doesn't rush off. He stays right where He is. Can you imagine the confusion among the disciples? Jesus, this is one of your best friends. This guy helps support your ministry. This family is an amazing family. Why aren't you getting up and rushing off to help him? You can help him. He's sick. And he waits. And then he goes, we've got to go. What do you mean we got to go? You've been waiting all this time. Now it's time to go. Yes, we've got to go because Lazarus is now dead. Jesus waited for Lazarus to die? Yes. When he finally reaches Bethany, Lazarus' sisters look at him and say, you should have been here earlier. You could have done something. We've seen you heal. We've seen you change lives. We've seen everything different. You should have been here earlier. You could have helped. Jesus says, where is Lazarus? Well, we've got him buried over here. Let's go to the gravesite. Roll the stone away. Oh, Lord, don't do that. Don't do that. Why? He's been dead 4 days. By now, he stinks. Don't open the tomb. Jesus says, open it anyway. And he speaks, Lazarus. Lazarus. Wow. We'll skip one verse. Go to John chapter 11, verses 43 and 44. And we'll go back to the other verse after this. When he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. No one had ever done that. No one standing there said, I think Lazarus may be still dead. No one disputes the reality of the miracles of Jesus. They are instant. They are successful. There's no known relapses because you know what? They would have had people coming out of the woodwork. Well, he said he healed me, but I just had that problem. And the next thing I know, I was back in the same situation. You don't have that. You have that with every other miracle healer in the world, but not Jesus. And folks, there are enough, and people say, well, yeah, but the church has controlled information. For the first 300 years, let me tell you, the information that was being published and promoted and guided by the governments of the world was against Jesus. But no one came out and said he was a fake because they knew he wasn't. His miracles were incredible. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, it says Jesus was going through all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Jesus is unique in that he is the God-man, unique in that he is the only one ever born of a virgin, unique in that his life ministry was filled with miracles, unique in the fact that he died as the Savior. Our Savior, the Christ, the Anointed One, dying for us. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 says, he made him, God made him, who knew no sin, talking about Jesus, to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God. You see, Jesus wasn't captured by the Romans. tormented by the Jews, crucified by both. The Bible tells us that Jesus willingly gave his life. Jesus came to be born of a virgin so that you and I could have life. Jesus lived out his life in perfection so that you and I could have life. Jesus died on the cross willingly for you and me so that we could have life. As he's hanging on the cross, the darkness comes from noon to 3 p.m. As he's hanging on the cross, an earthquake happens. And during that earthquake, the tombs open up. Have you ever paid any attention to the fact that the Bible says, and there are sources outside the Bible that also corroborate this information, that when Jesus Christ died, dead people came to life and walked the streets and talked with people? It happened. Some of the most amazing miracles on the cross was that Jesus Christ would look down at those religious rulers. He would look down at those Roman soldiers. He would look down at those who had been his disciples and fled, and said, Father, forgive them. Wow. And in John 19:30 it says, therefore, when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and he gave up his spirit. Jesus died. There are many groups that will say Jesus didn't die. God can't die. God can't die on a cross. Well, let me say this. Jesus died. Jesus is God who became flesh, who lived among us so that you and I could have our sin debt paid, our shame debt, our rebellious debt, whatever you want to call it. The fact is, you and I are not in a proper relationship with God unless we are in a proper relationship with Jesus Christ. And he died on the cross so that we could have life. But another unique thing is, not only that he died on the cross, but that he came back to life. The uniqueness of the resurrection, the most amazing miracle of the Bible. Jesus, dead, comes to life. The psalmist said that would happen. It said in Psalm 16, verse 10, for you will not abandon my soul in Sheol, nor will you allow your Holy One to undergo decay. Paul talks about the fullness of the gospel presentation when he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 3 through 8, for I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12. After that, appeared to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now. But some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, as to one untimely born, he appeared to me also. Over a 40-day period, Jesus Christ would teach and meet with people. More than 500 people. I want us to understand, Jesus lives. Another unique thing is that he returned to heaven. There was the ascension of Jesus Christ. It's interesting how in some cultures, resurrection just doesn't, it's nice that he came back to life, but is he really in power? Well, the ascension takes that. Remember, Jesus had said, in the original text we read, you will see me at the right hand of power. And Jesus, in the book of Acts, in the book of Mark, we see that he's received up to heaven and he's sat down at the right hand of God. The early church's confession in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, by common confession, great is the mystery of godliness. He who was revealed in the flesh, was vindicated in the Spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, taken up in glory. And then I've mentioned this before. Jesus lived sinless. There's no yin and yang in Jesus. Jesus doesn't have a little bit of sin. Jesus wasn't homosexual, like some would say. Jesus wasn't married or lived like he was married, even though he really wasn't. Jesus didn't have out-of-wedlock children. Jesus wasn't married at all. You know, we've got all these little stories that run around that question the validity of the life of Jesus, but they don't come from the sources. Oh, but this says it came from the lost books of the Bible. Yeah. They're called the lost books of the Bible because they're not Bible. They're not even written in the same century. And when we look at things, we need to understand the enemies would falsely accuse him. But listen, if there was something to accuse Jesus of accurately, don't you think that the Sanhedrin, that they would have done that? The Sanhedrin, who hated him, who wanted him dead, who convicted him, who punished him, brought witness after witness after witness, and no one could come up with anything against Jesus. When he went before Pilate to be on trial, Pilate said, "This guy's innocent." When he went to the cross, the thief on the cross looks and says, "He has done no wrong." In the midst of all of this, the soldier at the foot of the cross looks up and says, "Truly, this man is righteous." Wow. But I think it's interesting that even those closest to Jesus, because you know what? If you ask my sister, "Is your brother a sinner?" my sister would very quickly laugh and go, "Yes, he is." And you know what? I do the same thing for her. You do the same thing for your brother and sister. Oh, they think they're perfect. They think they're wonderful. I can tell you, they're not. Husbands, if you think you're perfect, just ask your wife. If it's not your anniversary, she'll be honest. You know, we look at it and we go, all these types of things. Listen, the family of Jesus were not believers until after the crucifixion, after the resurrection. And they would give witness to the fact that Jesus was without sin. And in Hebrews, the author of Hebrews says, "For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all the ways as we are, yet without sin." Jesus, even in his lifetime, looked at others and says, "You want to convict me of a sin? Do it." I wouldn't be bold enough to ask you that, because you would come up with something. Jesus, in that situation, had no charges brought against him. So I want you to understand this morning, we serve a unique Lord. As a Christian, we're not serving a philosophy that, no matter what somebody says, has changed in its meaning and its context and everything over the years. We serve a risen Lord who truly today makes a difference in our life. So if you want to grow in your Christian walk, begin there by going back and recognizing the uniqueness of Jesus Christ. This morning, you may be here and you've never accepted Jesus into your own personal life. And you may not feel like it's ever been explained to you this way. But I want to let you know that Jesus died on a cross for you. He wants you to walk in a relationship with him. So this morning, would you give yourself to Christ? And also this morning, those of us who know Christ, can we just, sort of like the song that we sang at the beginning of the service, we believe. Just go through those thoughts and say, Lord Jesus, I believe you are God in the flesh. I believe you are virgin born. I believe, and just walk through. And thank the Lord for his amazing love. Let's pray. Lord, you are an amazing God. You are wonderful. And today, we ask, Lord, that as we come before you at this moment, that we present ourselves to you. In Jesus' name, amen.